No going back. Oh. Since I'm going to, no. Make sure it's in nice and straight. Why isn't? No way. Gauge is on, you can see the red light in the back. Got the auxiliary port. Turn on the middle, you hear bloop through the speakers.
Send your mail white plate gun. The plates have not been signed, however, reasonable grounds to justifying investigative stop have been established.
Welcome back to vlog 2. I just got my car back. The repair bills for the timing chain and solenoid were a bit more than I was planning on, so most of our modification budget for the car this year just went out the window. Thankfully, I got most of the parts that we needed for the year. I just got a few more odds and ends that arrived in the mail, and I found a few more things that I'm going to put up for sale on the marketplace, so hopefully that will cover the rest of the budget that we need to cover the odds and ends and fittings that we probably still need. So I was using this cardboard box as a rough shape for my fuel cell. Now that I got my actual fuel cell, let's see how well I did. I would say those dimensions are pretty spot on. The only major difference is the height. But I took that into consideration because we have the sump on the bottom of the fuel cell. Let me lift up the bed frame and shove the tank in there and see how it looks. That'll support the wood from flipping over. There we go. Air pump. Now you should have the sump of the fuel cell face the back of the car, but given that there's a slope in my spare tire area, we're going to put the sump toward the front of the car. We're also not drag racing, and it's not a primary fuel tank for the car, so I'm not worried about all the gas sloshing toward the back and not being able to feed the pump. It's just going to be a transfer tank. Originally, I wanted to go with a 22 to 25 gallon fuel cell, but with the new water tank and all my other camping stuff in the car, it was pretty much not going to happen unless I cut out my spare tire area, which I wasn't opposed to doing. I'd have to fabricate some type of metal box and weld it to the car. I just don't know how to weld yet, so that might be coming up in the future. We may upgrade the tank to a larger one. So since I couldn't go with a 22 to 25 gallon fuel cell, my next thing was going to go with a 20 gallon fuel cell. In order to make it work in here, it would have had to have been mounted lengthwise with the car and would have been pressed up pretty good along the back firewall. I did not feel comfortable with that. I know there's a rear crash bar in the bumper, but I was lightly tapped in Colorado and it bent the bash bar and pushed in the rear frame just a little bit. So I went with the 16 gallon fuel cell, so I was able to mount it from driver's side to passenger side. So we should be safer with the 16 gallon fuel cell because we'll have the crash bar, the rear firewall, and then a 4 to 6 inch gap before actually hitting the fuel cell. No going back. So it was an extremely tight fit. The cardboard box measured in at 24 inches, while the fuel cell was actually 25 inches. So squeezing it in kind of gouged the kill mat a little bit, but it was because I did not take the water tank out. I lifted up the water tank and it slid in quite nice. I'm still going to have to trim some of the plastic piece from the interior quarter panel. So I'm going to remove the water tank, take out the fuel cell, trim this up, take out my solar battery because when I went and took my car in for repairs, I forgot all of my electronics were on. And since the car was inside, it didn't get sun, did not charge my battery, and I'm pretty sure that I killed my solar battery. Hopefully I can still salvage this and use it for a month or so. I'll let you know how that goes. Now I have the bed frame fully removed. I did not have to cut off this plastic piece. It was actually super glued on. So once that piece was removed, the fuel cell fit in absolutely fine. We got the cooler mocked up over here. and the full-size spare tire over here, but this is a full-size tire for the Honda Fit, not a full-size tire for what I actually have. These are 205/55/16, so it's about an 8-inch tire. This is a 7-inch tire, so it's not too bad. We just have to take that extra inch into consideration when I build the bed frame on top of it and the new electronic stack. I don't want to build something too big or too deep and then it not clear the spare tire on the bottom. This is an extra inch larger in diameter, so that may hit the seat. I might have to scoot this back a little bit and try to level it out. I also might have to put the spare tire back on this side because I do not like the cooler on this side, at least all the way pushed out, because the plug-in cord is here and that's definitely going to clip the door. I at least want the cooler to face this direction so you can open the lid when you fold my mat over. If it's faced the other direction, shouldn't be a pain, but if you're in the front seat or the passenger seat and want to reach behind and open the cooler, I definitely want the lid to open that way. One more thing before moving on, don't mind the wires here. This is an empty 2-gallon Rotopax fuel tank. It's always been empty. I just used it to elevate the cooler to the height of my bed frame so everything would be nice and level. I am going to remove this and replace it with a foldable traction board. Since we no longer have the roof rack with the Rototrax traction boards and the cargo basket, we're going to need something in case we get stuck in the mud or snow. And since it's something that I don't use that often, it should be fine under the cooler. If I scoot the seat forward, I should be able to slide it out under the cooler, no problems at all. At least that's the game plan. Just in case anyone was curious, I threw it in this way. It's not as big, but it is larger than the spare tire. Best bet is to leave it in the spare tire area. I could mount the full-size spare tire on the trunk, but I'm kind of concerned about putting all the weight toward the back, especially with the auxiliary fuel cell. So I think the weight distribution would be much better where the fuel cell is now. I have both seats removed, so that's weight deducted. Plus I usually drive by myself on my road trips, so the spare tire will be most of the weight on the right-hand side. So I removed the center plank here just to do some more test fitting. And if I have the cooler on this side with the spare tire here, I just realized that the spare tire is going to block the plug on the cooler. So it's definitely going to need to be scooted to the side. Let me put my mattress back in and flip it closed and see if the cooler flipped around and opening the door is really an issue if I have to open it the other way. Fuel cell, cooler hinged that way with the fan behind it. Of course it's going to give me trouble now. Opens fairly well most of the way. When I flipped it around the opposite way and I had to open it hinged that way, it had to move and it did not work well with the fan inside of the frame. So I'm going to keep it hinged this way, but I'm going to shift it over to that side once more. So I chopped off the front third of my bed frame. I think I cut a piece too short on the driver's side, but that's okay. I plan on cutting up some new wood and then we could make the holes bigger, saving even more weight. So this piece needs to be one longer piece. I know the cooler is in the way, but we are going to notch it out to come up and over and build a new leg over here. So these are my food storage and cooking utensils. The plan, I think, is going to be moving one of these or changing up the container, putting all of my electronics in the middle, the charge controller, all the USB ports and 12-volt ports in here, or on the other side. We'll determine that. And then this will be a new container for the cooking ware and everything. It's kind of like a Pelican case. It'll be strong enough so when we unfold the mat, you can lay on it no issues. And then you can just take it off and we got the full-size spare tire there. And if you remember 2 years ago, I used the upside down spare tire as a toilet, so that might be coming back. I temporarily mounted the Noco jump pack on the side. That will probably be mounted on the inside and also be tied into the electronic stack. That way it'll always be topped off. But now my project for today, or for right now, is to mock up this fuel gauge. It's going to be a tight fit, but I think it should work. So the outer ring here is slightly larger, and if we look, that should fit quite nice there. Got some more packages to open, 2 for the fuel cell, and then some cases for the Hot Wheels. Some of them are quite old and they need to be protected. Anyway, front. So I just removed the front here, and we should have enough room to run the wiring for the fuel gauge and everything. Let me drill this out and I'll let you know how that goes. My Dremel is missing some pieces, so we're gonna have to drill this out. I have an 1.5 inch spade bit, and then I'll probably sand it out larger for the gauge. Ooh. Alright, I'm gonna sand it out with a file from here. Took a little bit, but I got it. Definitely gonna add a Dremel on the tool list. Even the $10, $15 Harbor Freight one does the job quite well. Since I noticed that I had some free space along the bottom here, I might have enough room to put some switches along the bottom. See how that looks. I'm gonna throw this back up and hopefully we can wire up the gauge today, at least make it light up when I turn the car on. So I got 5 packages and I misplaced 2 of them. Hopefully they're just laying around the garage here. We'll get to that when I need them. One of the packages was another 90 Vibrant Performance fitting. We're gonna open this so we could put it on today. We're not gonna connect it to the hose because my AN wrench set hasn't arrived yet. I believe that's coming Monday. It is Saturday. So the last video, I said this tripled in price. I checked again and it came down a little bit. So I got myself the teal Honda Prelude. These should be some AN end caps. Let me get that ace, son. Boom. One more. And the last thing I ordered was a big box of Hot Wheel protective cases. So most likely, I'm assuming my vents will go out this way, since I'm going to, no, let me rethink that. My new electronic stack will be on this side, so we should vent it out this way. And cap this side off. Since it's just going to be a transfer tank, we don't need a return line. And then we have another cap and a 90 somewhere around here in an Amazon package, or we have the other cap. I just got to look for the other 90, and those will be on the back. That clears very nicely. And then we got to do the sending unit. What I do have to order is straps and then bolt this down, so when we go over bumps, it's not going to jump around, and in the unlikelihood of an accident and we flip the car, the tank's not going to come up. Fuel gauge is looking pretty good. If I trim some more plastic off in the back, I'll get a better flush fit. Right now, I'm going to worry about the wiring here. Going to run a fuse block. So this one's a bit large. Hopefully I can fit it somewhere. We're going to run the cable. There's actually already a cable coming in from the engine to the firewall. So we need one for the CB radio scanner, the fuel gauge, the fuel pump, the radar detector, and possibly the ALP. It's probably going to take a bit, so I'm going to put the camera down for a while and come back in an hour and see where we're at. It is about 5 hours later. I stared at the car and the dashboard for about 4 hours, 3 hours, until I figured out what I was going to do. I did it, and then I took it all apart and redid it better. So it looks a little messy and intimidating right now, but I assure you it's just all scrap wire I'm going through, getting pre-made pieces so I don't have to make any myself. Let me show you what we got a-crackin'. So coming in from the accessory power, we have a disconnect for the positive, and I just have an extended wire for the ground because I ran out of the quick disconnects. So the ground wire is extra long, so I can add a disconnect later. From the power and ground, we're tying in from the accessory port. There is a inline fuse to power both the light for the gauge and the gauge itself. It's looking quite clean. Positive and negative for the light. Autometer, you kind of get a fail that this is not an LED bulb. This is still incandescent and a soft white. I put the red cap on it anyway. Positive and negative for the light. There's the fuse tying into the 12-volt accessory port, and then down here to power the gauge, the 12-volt, another inline fuse tied into here. I don't have anything big that I use on the 12-volt accessory port, so I should be fine current and amp wise. Got some other wires torn apart here. A lot of these are cables and data cables for the GPS tracking units and the CB antenna. I'm going to wire my CB antenna up a little differently so I can turn it on and off with a switch rather than turning it on and off with the knob, and then put my car back together, and I think that's going to call it a night. I did find my other two packages. They were actually in the trunk underneath the fuel cell, so hopefully we can work on plumbing this tomorrow. So the two packages I misplaced ended up being underneath the fuel cell. Let's pop these open. You can definitely cut these off and open them and put them back in their bag and zip it shut. Did not know that. So I could actually keep these for bags. We got another 90. We got one for the vent and another one for the sump at the bottom to go into the fuel pump. And this is an AN fitting vice clamp. It's magnetic. So we could put this on and get an AN wrench, and then hopefully this shouldn't mar or scratch our fittings. And I was waiting on the wrench, and apparently this was in the mailbox this whole time. One more, let's try to save the bag. I put a light on top of the unboxing this time. Hopefully it looks a little better. There we go. Perfect. Let's take our cap, our 90, screw these on really quick, and then we'll take our hose I think I'll practice making a fitting on the vent line first. See if these are easy to get off. Yes, and just like last time, the other one's probably going to be stubborn. No, coming off. Excellent. It doesn't matter at the moment which one I put them on. I just want to put them on to put them on. And cap off the other one. Also have to figure out where to mount the fuel pump and fuel filter. Capping off this end, this is going to go to the fuel pump. Capping off the other end, and this is going to go to the vent line or the charcoal canister filter. I believe that is on the passenger side. If not, it's on the driver's side. I may have to drop the middle skid plate, but I saw somebody online unclip a few clips underneath the car and actually just pry it down, and they were able to unbolt it that way without taking the whole skid plate off. But I just might want to take the whole skid plate off because we're going to have to find out how to plumb this into the gas tank. I'm going to have to buy some Y's and T's so we could plumb this into the charcoal canister and the stock gas tank. So I got to add that to the parts list. The chevrons should be arriving today as well, so we might be able to put those on. So let me show you what we finished up the other day. We wired in the fuel gauge for the fuel cell to the accessory port. It's 180 watt max, which I'm not even using anywhere close to. So we wired it up to the fuel gauge and the light to the fuel gauge as well. I did put an inline fuse and wired it up quite nicely. I'd give this project like a 9 out of 10. The only reason I don't give it a 10 out of 10 is because if we pop this off at the moment, I have a quick disconnect for the positive cable, but I ran out of quick disconnect, so the negative cable just has a 2-foot strand, so I'll be able to pop this out and pull it out really far if need be until I get another quick disconnect, and then we'll put that in and trim the wire down. So this can be easily fixed. Like I said, 9 out of 10. I'd like to also mention that I removed the auxiliary cable, and that is wired in with an aux cable to the back of my CB radio and scanner. So now that will play out of the car speakers. We also wired the CB radio to turn on with the middle switch since we no longer have the light bar on the roof. Let's see when I turn this on. Gauge is on, you can see the red light in the back. Got the auxiliary port. Turn on the middle, you hear bloop through the speakers. I'll have to try to get a scan later and put that in the video.
I'll send your mail white plate done. The plates have not been signed, however, reasonable grounds to justifying investigative stop have been established.
Anyway, let's get back to work. So we rewired the CB radio and scanner. We added the gauge to the center console, and then I rewired these switches. So I'm going to try and practice plumbing an AN fitting on the hose. After I practice getting a hose on this 90 vent line, I'm going to wire up the sending unit to the gauge. So I have some 16 gauge wire for the sending unit, but unfortunately I don't think I have enough. So I can use this for another ground connection, but I'm gonna have to order up another spool. Let's get to the AN fitting. I'm hoping the end has a straight enough cut so we can just utilize the factory end piece. Looks pretty straight. We're going to wedge this in. I'm going to use how it came because it's a nice clean cut. Put it in here. There's a lip at the bottom, so it'll stop right there. From there, there's a thread, and we'll stick this in the vise with the AN fitting clamp I have. Spray some lubricant on this end and start threading it into this nut or AN fitting. And as it threads in, it's going to wedge itself into the hose. And then I'll have to use the AN wrench to top it off. So let's get over to the vise. I already stabbed myself with the hose. Put this on. Make sure I'm in frame here. A little bit more. Make sure I'm pushing it in evenly. There we go. Get some spray lube. This goes into the vise, and we're going to need to hold the hose so it doesn't get pushed out of the fitting. Hand tighten this in as much as we can, and then get our AN wrench and put it in. Last time I just used a wrench and put some tape around it, but since we're doing bigger projects and I got some more plumbing probably that I'm gonna do, I decided to finally get the proper tools. So we all start somewhere. That's I should have the help of the table to hold the hose up. So spray some lubricant. I broke the tab off. I'm just gonna push down on it, spread it around. Make sure it's in nice and straight. Why isn't? No way. That's 8. What is this one, a 9? Sorry, tripod. No way. Get out of here. Well, I don't even have a wrench to tighten this down. Isn't that a dilemma? That would have been a nice install video, but unfortunately I can't continue on until I get a 10 AN wrench. I should have just bought the whole set or an adjustable one, but here we are. So I'm gonna go order up the 10 AN wrench and probably a few more parts that I need. So that's probably going to wrap up today's video until our next batch of parts arrives, and by then we should be able to plumb the fuel cell, work on our new bed frame, and apply the new graphics to the car. So stay tuned.